6:30 a.m., same time I'd been walking through these doors for 19 years. Meridian Tech Solutions, Austin, Texas. My badge still worked, for now. I grabbed my usual black coffee from the break room and headed to my desk. Network Operations Center was quiet this early. Just the hum of servers and the soft glow of monitoring screens. This was my world. Every cable, every switch, every line of code in this building's infrastructure had my fingerprints on it. Luis was already at his workstation, headphones on, probably troubleshooting the Dallas office connectivity issues we'd been tracking. Good kid. I'd trained him myself 8 years ago when he was fresh out of UT. Now he was senior engineer, handling complex migrations like a pro. "Morning, Luis." He looked up, pulled off his headphones. "Hey, Nate, you see the email about the all-hands meeting today?" I hadn't checked email yet. "What meeting?" "Frank wants everyone in conference room Guadalupe at 9 a.m. Something about exciting new directions and digital transformation initiatives." Luis made air quotes, rolled his eyes. I'd heard that corporate speak before. Usually meant budget cuts or reorganization. At 47, with a 17-year-old daughter heading to college next year, I couldn't afford either. "Probably just quarterly planning," I said. You know how Frank loves his buzzwords. But something felt different this morning. There was an energy in the building, whispered conversations stopping when I walked by. Maybe I was paranoid. 19 years of keeping this place running 24/7 had taught me to notice when things were off. The real sign something was wrong came at 8:45 a.m. A kid walked through the lobby like he owned the place. 26 years old, maybe younger. Designer sneakers that cost more than my monthly truck payment. Supreme hoodie. AirPods in, scrolling his phone while he walked. No visitor badge, no escort from security. He went straight to the elevator bank like he'd been here 100 times. The security guard didn't even look up from his newspaper. I watched from the break room doorway as Frank Donovan himself came down to meet him. Frank, who barely acknowledged employees unless something was broken. Frank, who made us badge in and out for bathroom breaks during crunch time. But this kid got the full treatment. Handshake, pat on the shoulder, big smile. Frank was talking animated, gesturing toward the upper floors. The kid nodded along, still looking at his phone. They got in the elevator together. Frank pressed the button for the executive floor. "Who's the new guy?" I asked Lisa from HR when she passed by. "Oh, that's Tyler." Tyler Brooks, Frank's nephew. "He's starting today in a new role." She kept walking, didn't make eye contact. Frank's nephew. That explained the royal treatment. I made it back to my desk with 5 minutes to spare before the all-hands meeting. Luis was already heading to conference room Guadalupe, looking nervous. The rest of the team followed behind him like they were walking to their own execution. Conference room Guadalupe was packed. All 43 employees crammed in, standing room only in the back. Frank stood at the head of the table with his usual PowerPoint remote. Tyler sat to his right, still on his phone. "Good morning, everyone," Frank began. "I want to talk about the future. Technology is changing faster than ever. We need fresh perspectives. We need innovation. We need to think younger." My stomach dropped. I'd heard this speech before at my last company, right before they laid off half the engineering department. Frank clicked his remote. The screen lit up with buzzwords in colorful fonts. Digital transformation, AI-powered solutions, Gen Z leadership. That's why I'm excited to introduce our new Chief Digital Innovation Officer, Tyler Brooks. Tyler looked up from his phone for the first time, gave a little wave. "Hey everyone, super excited to be here. We're going to do some amazing things together." His voice had that California startup inflection. Everything sounded like a question, like he wasn't sure what he was saying. Frank beamed like a proud father. "Tyler brings fresh energy and digital native perspective to our operations. He'll be working closely with all departments to modernize our approach." I felt Luis shift beside me. We exchanged glances. Neither of us had been consulted about any modernization plans. "Now, this does mean some changes to our current structure," Frank continued. "We need to streamline operations, focus on efficiency, embrace new methodologies." The room got quieter. People stopped shifting in their chairs. Effective immediately, we're restructuring the network operations team. Tyler will be taking the lead on all infrastructure decisions going forward. My blood went cold. 19 years. 19 years of building this company's network from the ground up. Weekends spent in server rooms. Midnight calls when systems went down. I'd written every automation script, documented every configuration, trained every junior engineer who'd walked through these doors. "Now, this doesn't mean we don't value experience," Frank said, looking directly at me. "Nate, your institutional knowledge has been invaluable. But companies evolve. Technology changes. Leadership needs to reflect the future we want to build. Tyler leaned forward. I'm really looking forward to learning from everyone, especially the senior team members. What a foundation to inherit. Inherit. Like I was dead already. Frank clicked to the next slide. There will be some redundancies. We'll be conducting individual meetings this afternoon to discuss new roles and opportunities. The meeting ended with polite applause. People filed out quietly, avoiding eye contact. Luis hung back. Nate, this is crazy. You built everything here. They can, I said. And they will. I walked back to my desk and opened my laptop. Started checking access logs, backup procedures, documentation. If they were restructuring, I needed to know what they had and what they didn't. That's when I noticed something interesting in my email archive. October 2019. Email thread with Meridian's legal department about intellectual property assignments. I remembered this now. They'd wanted me to sign a blanket transfer document for all code and systems I'd developed. I'd refused, not out of spite, out of principle. The language was too broad. It would have given them ownership of everything, including personal projects I'd worked on at home, scripts I'd written on my own time to solve problems they couldn't figure out. The lawyer had assured me it was standard procedure. Everyone signed it, but I wasn't everyone. I'd responded that I needed clearer language defining what constituted company work versus personal development. They said they'd revise it and get back to me. They never did. I scrolled through my files, found the unsigned document in my personal folder, right there in black and white. Transfer of all intellectual property rights for systems, code, and methodologies developed by Nathan Crawford during employment with Meridian Tech Solutions. My signature line was blank. The automation scripts that ran their entire network infrastructure. The monitoring systems that prevented downtime. The custom configurations that made their multi-site setup possible. Legally, they belonged to me, Crawford Net. That's what I'd called the core automation suite. 15,000 lines of code written over 5 years. It handled everything from load balancing to security protocols to automatic failover procedures. Without it, their network was just expensive hardware sitting in racks. At 2 p.m., my phone rang. Internal call from HR. Nate, can you come to conference room Austin? Frank would like to speak with you. I saved my work, locked my screen, and walked down the hall. Frank was waiting with Lisa from HR and Tyler. Tyler was still on his phone. Nate, thanks for coming. Please sit down. I sat, kept my hands flat on the table. This isn't easy, Frank began. You've been with us a long time, longer than most people stay anywhere these days. But companies grow. They evolve. We need leadership that reflects where we're going, not where we've been. Lisa slid a folder across the table. We've prepared a generous severance package. I opened the folder. Standard termination paperwork. 2-week severance for every year of service. Health insurance continuation. Non-compete clause. And at the bottom, 3 signatures. Frank Donovan, Lisa Martinez, Luis Ramirez. Luis had signed off on my termination. I looked up at Frank. Luis signed this? We needed input from the senior engineering team about the restructuring. Luis understands the technical requirements going forward. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Just calculation. Can I ask why? Tyler finally looked up from his phone. Look, no offense, but we need someone who speaks Gen Z, not COBOL. The future is AI, machine learning, cloud-native solutions. We can't be held back by legacy thinking. Legacy thinking. 19 years of keeping their systems running was legacy thinking. What's your background, Tyler? He straightened up. MBA from Austin Tech Institute. 3 years at a digital marketing startup. I specialize in disruptive innovation and next-gen solutions. Austin Tech Institute was an online program. The marketing startup had folded 6 months ago. I'd looked him up on LinkedIn during the meeting. Any networking experience? I understand the principles. Technology is technology. It's all about vision and leadership. Frank cleared his throat. Nate, we'd appreciate your help with the transition. Training Tyler on the systems, documenting procedures. We can extend your end date if needed. And if I refuse, Lisa spoke up. The severance package is contingent on cooperation during the transition period. I closed the folder. I'll need to think about it. Of course, take the afternoon. Let us know tomorrow. I walked back to my desk. Luis was waiting by my workstation, looking like someone had shot his dog. Nate, I had to. They said if I didn't support the transition, my position would be redundant too. Maria just had the baby. I can't lose my job. I sat down, opened my laptop. I understand. Do you? You protected your family. Can't fault a man for that. But I didn't look at him when I said it. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a beer and my personal laptop. The one that never touched Meridian's network. Clean slate. I pulled up the unsigned IP transfer document again. Read through the legal language 3 times. The wording was clear. Without my signature, anything I'd developed independently remained my property. Crawford Net wasn't just automation scripts. It was the nervous system of their entire operation. Load balancing algorithms I'd written from scratch. Custom monitoring protocols that predicted failures before they happened. Security frameworks that had prevented dozens of breach attempts. Tyler thought he was inheriting a network. He was inheriting a house of cards. I opened a secure connection to my personal server at home. Started copying files I'd legally created on my own time. Documentation Tyler would never see. Backup configurations he didn't know existed. Access credentials to systems that weren't in any official directory. My phone buzzed. Text from my daughter Sarah. Dad, got my UT acceptance letter today. In-state tuition is $12,000 per semester. Can we make it work? $48,000 for 4 years. With my severance, I could maybe cover 2 semesters. After that, she'd need loans or I'd need a new job fast. At 47, with a specialized skill set, finding equivalent work wouldn't be easy, especially with Meridian's non-compete clause hanging over me. I looked back at the IP document. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I logged into Meridian's network using my personal access credentials. The ones tied to my maintenance account that predated their current security protocols. The ones Luis didn't know about because I'd set them up before he started. Everything was still running on Crawford Net. Every automation script, every monitoring routine, every failsafe I'd built over 5 years. Tyler's name was nowhere in the code comments or documentation. But that wasn't what caught my attention. Tyler had already started making changes. He'd renamed my primary automation suite from Crawford Net to Brooks Flow. Changed variable names, updated comment headers, even modified the GUI to show his name as the system architect. The kid was claiming ownership of code he couldn't read, let alone write. I made screenshots, documented everything. Then I dug deeper. What I found made me sick. Tyler had disabled 3 critical security protocols. Not modified them, disabled them completely. The intrusion detection system I'd spent 2 years perfecting was offline. The automated backup verification that had saved us from data loss 12 times was gone. The load balancing algorithm that prevented server crashes during peak traffic was replaced with a basic round-robin setup any freshman CS student could write. He'd kept a change log, apparently thought he was being professional. Removed legacy security bloat. TLB March 15, 2024. Simplified unnecessary backup redundancy. TLB March 16, 2024. Streamlined traffic distribution for efficiency. TLB 3/18/24. Legacy security bloat. 20 years of enterprise-grade protection was bloat to him. I checked the system performance metrics. Network latency was up 15% since Tyler took over. Error rates had doubled. 2 of the Dallas office connections had experienced intermittent outages that would have been prevented by the monitoring systems he'd removed. But the worst part was what he'd done to the disaster recovery protocols. I'd built a sophisticated failover system that could maintain operations even if the primary data center went down. Multiple redundancies, automatic rerouting, real-time backup synchronization. It had cost the company $200,000 to implement, but it guaranteed 99% uptime. Tyler had simplified it to a basic mirroring setup. If the main server farm failed now, they'd lose everything newer than the last scheduled backup. For a company that processed real-time financial transactions, that could mean millions in losses. He didn't understand what he was dismantling. I made copies of everything. His changes, the performance degradation, the security vulnerabilities he'd created. Then I checked one more thing. The monitoring backdoor I'd built into the system 5 years ago. It wasn't malicious, just a diagnostic tool that let me troubleshoot problems remotely. A ghost account that could observe system status without making changes. I'd forgotten about it until now. Tyler hadn't found it. Didn't even know to look for it. I could watch everything he did. Every change, every mistake, every disaster waiting to happen. And there was a big one coming. Meridian had landed their biggest client ever 3 months ago. Lone Star Financial, a regional bank with 200 branches across Texas and Oklahoma. They'd chosen Meridian specifically because of our network reliability and security protocols. The contract was worth $12 million over 3 years. It also came with penalty clauses. If our systems caused any downtime that affected their banking operations, we'd pay damages of $50,000 per hour. Tyler was planning a demonstration for their executives next week. Project showcase according to his calendar. He wanted to show off his revolutionary improvements to our infrastructure. Live demonstration, real-time performance metrics, network optimization algorithms running on actual client data. I checked his preparation notes. He'd scheduled the demo for their peak traffic hours, 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, when all 200 branches would be processing loan applications, account transfers, and daily reconciliation. The kid was going to stress test systems he'd stripped of safety protocols with the most important client we'd ever had. I made more screenshots. Then I started making phone calls. Apex Network Solutions, this is Greg Martinez. Mr. Martinez, this is Nathan Crawford. I saw your LinkedIn post about expanding operations in Texas. Nathan Crawford. I know that name. You're the guy who built Meridian's infrastructure, right? Heard nothing but good things. I'm currently exploring new opportunities. Would you be interested in discussing a consultation arrangement? Hell yes, when can you come in? How about tomorrow? I drove to Dallas the next morning. Apex was smaller than Meridian but growing fast. Clean offices, modern equipment, hungry team looking to compete with the established players. Greg Martinez was ex-military like me, Navy captain turned CEO. We understood each other immediately. We've been trying to land Lone Star Financial for 2 years, he told me over coffee. Meridian beat us on the technical proposal. Your work, I'm assuming. Partially. What would it take to build something better? I pulled out my tablet, showed him network topology diagrams I'd been working on at home. Next generation architecture that improved on everything I'd built at Meridian. Faster, more secure, more resilient. How long? 6 months for full implementation. 3 months for a functional prototype. What do you need? Clean budget, no interference, and a front row seat when Meridian's demonstration goes sideways next week. Greg smiled. You think it's going to fail? I know it's going to fail. The morning of Tyler's demonstration, I sat in my truck in the Meridian parking lot. I had my laptop open, connected to the ghost monitoring account Tyler still didn't know existed. 8:47 a.m. Tyler arrived in a Tesla Model S. Daddy's money probably. He walked into the building wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. 9:15 a.m. Lone Star Financial executives started arriving. 3 black SUVs, CFO, CTO, and their head of cybersecurity. These weren't people you wanted to embarrass. I opened my monitoring dashboard. All systems were green, but I could see the stress fractures Tyler had created. Network latency spikes every few minutes. Memory leaks in the load balancer. Security protocols running in degraded mode. The system was holding together with digital duct tape. 9:30 a.m. My phone buzzed. Text from Luis. Nate, something's wrong with the Dallas connection. Getting intermittent timeouts. Tyler says it's normal variance, but the clients are complaining. I typed back, check the failover logs. Primary rotor might be overloaded. Tyler disabled automatic failover. Says it was causing unnecessary switches. I stared at the message. Tyler had removed the one thing that could save him when the system started failing. 10:45 a.m. Through my monitoring tools, I watched Tyler's team prep for the demonstration. They were running diagnostics on systems they didn't understand, using tools they hadn't built. Luis was in the background looking nervous. He kept trying to get Tyler's attention, pointing at error messages on his screen. Tyler waved him off. 11:30 a.m. I got out of my truck and walked into the building. Used my visitor access to reach the observation area outside the main conference room. Through the glass wall, I could see Tyler setting up his presentation. The Lone Star executives sat at the conference table looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Bankers don't like dog and pony shows. They want results. Frank stood at the back, beaming with pride. His nephew was about to show off the future of network management. Tyler clicked his remote. The big screen lit up with his slide deck. Revolutionary AI-powered network optimization. The Brooks Flow Advantage. Brooks Flow, my code with his name on it. Gentlemen, what you're about to see represents the next generation of network infrastructure. Real-time optimization, predictive analytics, self-healing architecture. He had no idea what those words meant. Now let's see Brooks Flow in action, Tyler said, clicking to a live dashboard. This is our real-time network monitoring system, processing actual client data from Lone Star's 200 branch locations. The screen showed network traffic flowing across a map of Texas. Green lines connecting cities, data packets moving like digital blood through arteries I'd designed. Tyler pointed at the metrics. As you can see, we're maintaining optimal performance across all nodes. Latency under 50 milliseconds, 0 packet loss. This is the power of next-generation automation. The Lone Star. CTO leaned forward. Impressive. But what happens under stress? Our peak hours can generate 10 times normal traffic. Great question, Tyler said. Let me show you our adaptive load balancing. He clicked a button labeled Simulate Peak Load. I knew what that button did. It would flood the system with artificial traffic to test capacity limits. Under normal circumstances, with my original protocols active, the system would gracefully distribute the load across backup servers and adjust processing priorities to maintain performance. But Tyler had disabled the automatic failover systems, removed the dynamic load balancing algorithms, simplified the traffic management to basic round-robin distribution. The simulation began. Network activity spiked on the dashboard. Tyler smiled confidently as the numbers climbed. Then the first error appeared. A single red dot on the map. Houston branch office. Connection timeout. That's just temporary variance, Tyler said quickly. The system is self-correcting. But I could see what was happening through my monitoring tools. The Houston server was overloaded. Without automatic failover, traffic was still being routed to a node that couldn't handle the capacity. The backup server sat idle while the primary systems crashed. More red dots appeared. Dallas, San Antonio, Austin. Is this normal? The Lone Star CFO asked. Tyler's confidence wavered. Let me just adjust the parameters here. He clicked frantically through menu options, trying to manually redistribute the load. But he didn't understand the underlying architecture. Each change made things worse. The dashboard began flashing warnings. System overload, connection failures, data integrity alerts. Luis stood up from his workstation in the back. Tyler, we need to abort the simulation. The system can't handle— I've got this, Tyler snapped. But he didn't. Half the network was down now. The simulation was cascading into real system failures. The Lone Star executives exchanged glances. Their CTO pulled out his phone, probably checking if their actual banking systems were affected by this disaster. Mr. Brooks, the CFO said coldly, perhaps we should reschedule this demonstration. No, I can fix this, Tyler said, sweat beading on his forehead. He was clicking through system menus at random now, making changes he didn't understand to code he hadn't written. Each modification made the cascade failure worse. More red dots appeared on the map. Error messages flooded the monitoring console. The system was bleeding data packets like a severed artery. Frank stepped forward from the back of the room. Tyler, maybe we should— I said I've got this. But Tyler was panicking now. His hands shook as he tried to navigate the emergency protocols. Protocols I'd written. Protocols he'd never bothered to learn. Through my ghost access, I watched him attempt a manual system restart. The wrong command sequence. Instead of gracefully cycling the servers, he triggered a hard shutdown of the primary data center. The entire network went dark. Complete blackout. 200 bank branches lost connection simultaneously. The dashboard showed nothing but red alerts and timeout errors. The room fell silent except for the sound of cooling fans spinning down. What just happened? The Lone Star CTO asked. Tyler stared at the blank screen. There must be a hardware failure. This isn't software related. Someone sabotaged the system. Luis stood up. Tyler, you initiated an emergency shutdown. I saw the command sequence. We need to restart the failover systems immediately. What failover systems? I streamlined those. They were redundant legacy code. The Lone Star CFO closed his laptop. Gentlemen, I think we've seen enough. We'll be reviewing our contract terms with legal. They walked out without another word. Frank followed them, apologizing profusely, promising a full investigation. Tyler was left alone at the conference table, staring at the dead monitors. Luis tried to approach him, but Tyler waved him away. Just fix it. Figure it out. I'll be in my office. Luis looked at the blank screens, then at his phone. I knew what he was thinking. He was going to call me, but I was already walking back to my truck. My phone rang before I reached my truck. Luis, Nate, please. I know what happened back there. I know you're probably thinking we got what we deserved, but I need help. The whole system is down. 200 bank branches can't process transactions. They're going to sue us into bankruptcy. I sat in my driver's seat, engine off. What does Tyler want you to do? He's locked himself in his office. Won't answer calls. Frank is in damage control mode with the executives. I'm supposed to figure out how to bring everything back online, but I don't know where to start. You built all this stuff. You signed my termination papers, Luis. Silence on the other end. Then, I know. I'm sorry. I was scared, but right now I need your help. Please, I can't help you. I don't work there anymore. Nate, this isn't about the company. People are going to lose their jobs. Good people. Maria just had the baby. Jenkins has 3 kids in college. Sarah from accounting is a single mom. I looked at my phone. Luis was playing the guilt card, and he was good at it. But he was also right. Tyler's incompetence was going to destroy more than just his own career. What's Tyler offering to fix this? He keeps saying it's a hardware problem. wants to call Dell and have them replace the servers. He doesn't understand that it's software. The failover systems you built aren't responding because he removed the protocols that activate them. And Frank's convinced this is sabotage, industrial espionage. He's talking about calling the FBI. I almost laughed. Frank thought someone had hacked their system to make it fail. He had no idea his nephew had done more damage than any hacker could dream of. Luis, listen carefully. The system isn't broken. Tyler just doesn't know how to fix what he broke. The infrastructure is fine, but bringing it back online requires knowledge he doesn't have. Will you come back, just as a consultant? Frank will pay whatever you want. Number, why not? Because I'm busy. I start a new job Monday. Luis was quiet for a moment. New job? Where? Apex Network Solutions. CTO position. I'll be designing their next-generation infrastructure platform. Apex? But they're our biggest competitor. Not anymore. After today, they're about to become the biggest network solutions provider in Texas. I hung up and drove to Apex's Dallas office. Greg Martinez was waiting in the conference room with his legal team and 3 engineers I didn't recognize. How bad was it? Greg asked. Complete system failure. 200 bank branches offline. Client executives walked out mid-demonstration. Greg whistled low. That's career-ending. For Tyler, maybe. But Frank will find a way to blame everyone except his nephew. Probably fire half the engineering team to save face. Including Luis? Especially Luis. He knows too much about what really happened. I opened my laptop and connected to the conference room display. Here's what I'm proposing. The screen filled with network architecture diagrams. Clean, efficient, bulletproof. Everything I'd learned from 19 years of building systems, plus improvements I'd never had budget approval to implement at Meridian. This is CrawfordNet 2. 0. Triple redundancy, predictive failure analysis, automated load balancing that actually works. 6 months from prototype to full deployment. Cost? $2 million for infrastructure. Another $500,000 for implementation. But it'll handle 10 times the traffic load with half the maintenance overhead. Greg's CFO looked up from her calculator. Meridian charged Lone Star $12 million for 3 years. You're talking about building something better for 2.5. Something better, faster, and backed by a team that actually understands what they built. Greg stood up. What do you need to get started? Server space, development budget, and 3 good engineers who aren't afraid of working long hours. Done. What else? I want to make Lone Star Financial an offer they can't refuse. 3 hours later, Greg and I were sitting in Lone Star's corporate headquarters. Their CTO, James Morrison, looked like he'd aged 5 years since the morning's disaster. Mr. Crawford, I have to ask, after what we saw today, how do we know Apex won't have the same problems? Because I built Meridian's system, I know exactly where the weak points are. And I know how to fix them. I showed him the same diagrams I'd presented to Greg. But for Lone Star, I added something special, real-time integration with their existing banking software. Something Meridian had never offered. How long, Morrison asked. Proof of concept in 30 days. Full deployment in 90. And I guarantee 99. 99% uptime or you don't pay. Morrison looked at his team. What about the Meridian contract? Check the penalty clauses, Greg said. After today's failure, you have grounds for immediate termination. Morrison smiled for the first time all day. Mr. Crawford, let's talk details. 2 weeks later, Meridian Tech Solutions made the local business news. Not for their innovation, for their lawsuit. Lone Star Financial was suing for breach of contract. $12 million in damages plus operational losses from the system failure. Frank had tried to claim force majeure, act of God, industrial sabotage. None of it stuck. The real story came out in the legal discovery. Tyler's modifications to the system, the disabled security protocols, the removed failover mechanisms. Expert witnesses testified that the failure was caused by gross technical negligence and unqualified personnel making critical infrastructure decisions. Frank fired Tyler quietly. No press release, no explanation. Tyler's LinkedIn went dark 2 days later. Luis called me on a Thursday afternoon. Nate, they let me go yesterday. Budget cuts, they said. Had to eliminate redundant positions. I'm sorry, Luis. Are you? Really? I thought about it. Yeah, I am. You're a good engineer. You just made a bad choice. Frank's putting all the blame on the engineering team. Says we should have caught Tyler's mistakes before the demonstration. Like we had any authority to stop him. What are you going to do? Look for work, I guess. Not many companies need senior network engineers in Austin, especially ones who just got fired from a high-profile failure. Luis, send me your resume. Why? Apex is expanding. We need experienced engineers who understand legacy systems. People who can work with existing infrastructure while building something new. Silence on the other end. Then, you'd hire me? After what I did? You signed a paper to protect your family. I understand that. But if you work for me, you work for me. Not for politics. Not for anyone's nephew. Just for the technology and the team. What's the pay? 20% more than Meridian was paying you. Plus equity if the company hits performance targets. When do I start? Monday. But Luis, understand something. You get one chance to earn back my trust. Don't waste it. The following month, Apex's proof of concept went live for Lone Star Financial. 96 hours of continuous operation without a single timeout or connection failure. Load testing showed the system could handle 5 times their peak traffic without degradation. Morrison called Greg personally. Whatever you're paying Crawford, double it. This is exactly what we needed. 3 months later, Meridian filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They'd lost 4 major clients after the Lone Star debacle. The remaining contracts weren't enough to cover their overhead and legal expenses. Frank put the company up for sale. The asking price was $8 million for all assets, including the office building and remaining client contracts. Greg called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. Interested in going back to your old workplace? As what? As the owner. 6 months later, I walked through the doors of what used to be Meridian Tech Solutions. The building looked the same, but everything else had changed. New signs in the lobby. Apex Network Solutions, Austin Division. My business cards read Chief Technology Officer, but everyone knew the real story. This was my building now. Frank's corner office belonged to Sarah Kim, our new Austin site manager. Tyler's innovation lab had been converted into a proper server room with equipment that actually worked. The conference room where they'd fired me was now our client meeting space, complete with functional demonstration systems. Luis walked up as I finished my morning coffee. The Memphis bank migration is ahead of schedule. Should be online by Wednesday. Any problems? None. The automated deployment worked exactly like you designed it. Their IT director called it surgical precision. Good. What about the Dallas expansion? Construction starts next month. We'll need 12 more engineers by the 4th quarter if we land the petroleum industry contracts. I nodded. Apex was growing faster than we'd projected. Turns out there was huge demand for network infrastructure that actually worked. Who knew? My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Nate, this is Frank Donovan. I heard about the acquisition. Congratulations. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I'd like to apologize properly. I stared at the message for a moment. Frank wanted to apologize. The man who'd fired me after 19 years of loyal service wanted to clear his conscience. I typed back, "Thanks, but I'm busy building the future you said I couldn't understand." Then I deleted his number. At lunch, I drove to Sarah's high school to watch her soccer game. She was team captain now, had scholarship offers from 3 universities, all because I could afford to pay for the elite training camps and tournament travel. After the game, she ran over to the sideline. "Dad, you'll never guess what happened in computer science class today." "What, Mr. Peterson used your company as a case study about innovation and entrepreneurship. He said you're proof that experience beats hype every time." I smiled. Just remember that when you're older. People will try to convince you that new is always better. Sometimes the old ways work because they're right. Speaking of old, Mom called. She wants to know if you're dating anyone. "Tell your mother I'm too busy building networks to worry about networking." Sarah groaned. "Dad, that's terrible." "Even for you." That evening, I got a call from Greg. "Nate, you need to see the news." I turned on Channel 8. Business segment was running a story about Apex's rapid growth. Local tech company doubles revenue in 6 months after strategic acquisition. The reporter interviewed several of our new clients. All of them mentioned the same thing: reliable systems, experienced leadership, and engineers who actually understood the technology they were selling. Then came the kicker. Tyler Brooks had started a consulting firm called Digital Transformation Solutions. His website claimed he was an award-winning network architect with proven success in enterprise infrastructure modernization. He was using screenshots from the Meridian system. My system. Marketing materials showed network diagrams I'd created, performance metrics from infrastructure I'd built. The kid was literally selling my work as his own resume. "You seeing this?" Greg asked. "Yeah. Want me to call our lawyers?" "Already did." Turns out false advertising and misrepresentation of technical credentials is a serious issue in the consulting world, especially when you can prove the real architect is working for a competitor. How long until his clients figure out he's a fraud? Not long. Word travels fast in this industry, especially after what happened at Meridian. 2 days later, Tyler's website went dark. Digital Transformation Solutions quietly dissolved. LinkedIn showed he'd moved to California to pursue opportunities in sustainable technology ventures. Translation: His uncle found him a job at a solar panel startup where he couldn't break anything important. Meanwhile, Apex landed its biggest contract yet. State of Texas wanted to modernize the network infrastructure for all state agencies. 12-year deal worth $48 million. The bidding process took 3 months. We competed against IBM, Cisco, and 2 other major firms. Our proposal was technically superior and cost-effective, but the real advantage was credibility. I'd spent 19 years building networks that worked. Our competitors had spent 19 years building PowerPoint presentations. During the final presentation, the state CTO asked me directly, "Mr. Crawford, how do we know your systems won't fail like what happened with Meridian?" Because I built Meridian systems too. I know where they went wrong, and I fixed those problems. What went wrong? They put someone in charge who didn't understand what he was managing. That won't happen here. We won the contract unanimously. The signing ceremony was held in the state capitol. Governor's office, press conference, the whole show. I stood behind the podium wearing the same suit I'd worn to my termination meeting 18 months earlier. Only now, instead of signing severance papers, I was signing the largest technology contract in Texas state history. The press conference made the evening news across Texas. Local engineer wins state's largest tech contract. They interviewed me on the Capitol steps, microphones and cameras everywhere. "Mr. Crawford, how does it feel to go from unemployment to landing a $48 million contract in less than 2 years?" "It feels like justice," I said. Good work eventually gets recognized. Sometimes it just takes longer than you'd expect. What's your message to other experienced workers who feel pushed aside by younger management? Don't give up. Your knowledge has value. Find people who appreciate what you bring to the table. That night, my phone rang constantly. Job offers from competitors, interview requests from business magazines, LinkedIn connection requests from people who'd ignored me for years. But the call that mattered came at 11 p.m. "Dad, I saw you on the news. You looked like a total badass." Sarah was calling from her dorm room at UT. Full scholarship, engineering program, following in her old man's footsteps. "Language, kiddo." "I'm 19, Dad. I can say badass now. Besides, it's accurate. My friends are all impressed that my dad is some kind of tech mogul. I'm not a mogul. I'm just an engineer who got tired of being told he was obsolete. Whatever. Point is, you proved them wrong. Oh, and guess what? My computer networks professor assigned your company's white paper as required reading. Apparently you're famous in academic circles now too." After she hung up, I sat on my back porch with a beer, looking up at the stars. Quiet neighborhood, no traffic noise. Just the sound of cicadas and the distant hum of air conditioners. 2 years ago, I'd been packing up my desk in a cardboard box, wondering how I'd pay for Sarah's college. Now she was studying at UT on a full ride, and I was running the most successful network consulting firm in Texas. The revenge hadn't been about destroying Tyler or Frank. It had been about proving that experience matters. That expertise has value, that you can't replace knowledge with enthusiasm and a business degree. My phone buzzed one more time. Text message from Luis. "Boss, the Austin American-Statesman wants to do a feature story about the company. Something about the Phoenix rise of Nathan Crawford. Should I set it up?" I typed back, "Sure. But tell them I prefer the network engineer's revenge." Better headline. The Austin American-Statesman article ran on the front page of the business section. From Fired to Fortune, how Nathan Crawford built Texas's hottest tech company. They interviewed everyone. Greg Martinez talked about our partnership. Sarah Kim discussed the technical innovations. Even some of our clients gave quotes about reliability and service. But the most interesting part was the sidebar story. Where are they now? Frank Donovan had taken early retirement, sold his house in Westlake Hills, and moved to a smaller place in Round Rock. No mention of what he was doing with his time. Tyler Brooks was working as a digital marketing coordinator for a solar panel installer in San Jose. His LinkedIn profile had been scrubbed clean of any mention of network engineering or Meridian Tech. The article mentioned that Meridian's former headquarters building was now home to Apex Network Solutions' flagship Austin office, but didn't elaborate on the irony. I kept a copy of the newspaper on my desk. Not because I was proud of the publicity, but because it reminded me of something important. The story could have ended differently. If I'd been bitter instead of strategic, if I'd focused on revenge instead of rebuilding, if I'd let Tyler's incompetence define my worth instead of proving my value somewhere else. The real victory wasn't destroying Meridian. It was building something better. That afternoon, I got a visitor I wasn't expecting. Security called up from the lobby. "Mr. Crawford, there's a Frank Donovan here to see you. Says he doesn't have an appointment, but hopes you can spare a few minutes." I could have said no. Should have said no, probably. But curiosity won. Send him up. Frank looked older than his 60 years. Gray hair, tired eyes, cheap suit. Not the confident executive I remembered. Nate, thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Frank? He sat down across from my desk, the same desk where I'd signed the state contract 3 months earlier. I wanted to apologize. Properly, not in a text message. Okay, you've apologized. Anything else? I need you to understand something. Firing you wasn't personal. I thought I was doing what was best for the company. Tyler had ideas about modernization, digital transformation. It sounded like the future. The future of what? Systematic failure? Frank winced. I know now that I was wrong. About Tyler, about you, about everything. I leaned back in my chair. Frank, you fired a guy with 19 years of experience to make room for your nephew who didn't know the difference between a router and a switch. That wasn't a business decision. That was nepotism. You're right. I know I'm right. The question is, what do you want me to do about it? Frank looked around my office. Corner suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the Austin skyline. I guess I wanted to see if you'd consider giving me a job. I stared at Frank for a long moment. The man who destroyed my career was sitting in my office asking for a job. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a network cable. What kind of job, Frank? Anything. Sales, account management, project coordination. I know the industry. I have relationships with potential clients. I could bring value to the team. You fired me to hire your incompetent nephew. Now you want me to hire you because you have relationships? Frank's shoulders sagged. I know how it sounds. But I'm 60 years old, Nate. Nobody wants to hire a failed CEO. My savings are gone from the bankruptcy. My wife left me 6 months ago. I'm living in a 1-bedroom apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda. I felt a flicker of something. Not pity exactly, but recognition. I knew what it was like to have your world collapse overnight, to wonder how you'd pay the bills or maintain your dignity. But I also remembered sitting in that conference room, listening to him explain why my 19 years of loyalty meant nothing compared to his nephew's MBA from an online program. Frank, let me ask you something. When you fired me, did you think about what would happen to my family? My daughter's college fund? My mortgage payments? No, he said quietly. I didn't think about any of that. But you want me to think about yours? Frank looked at his hands. I suppose I deserve that. You deserve worse than that. You destroyed good people's careers because you couldn't admit your nephew was a fraud. Luis, Jenkins, Sarah from accounting. How many families did you hurt to protect Tyler? 15 people lost their jobs because of the bankruptcy. 16, I corrected. You fired me first, remember? Frank stood up slowly. I understand. I shouldn't have come here. It was presumptuous. He turned toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, Nate, you were the best engineer I ever worked with. I should have trusted your judgment instead of my family loyalty. After he left, I sat alone in my office thinking about second chances and justice. Frank had made his choices. Now he was living with the consequences. But there was something else to consider. Something Sarah had said about proving that good work gets recognized. 3 months later, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I hired Frank Donovan, not as an executive, not as a manager, as a junior account coordinator reporting to Luis, who is now our Austin site director. Are you out of your mind? Greg asked when I told him. The guy fired you. He destroyed his own company through incompetence. Why would you want him here? Because he knows the industry, because he understands his mistakes, and because everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. Even people who don't deserve it, especially people who don't deserve it. Frank's first day was awkward for everyone. He sat in the same building where he'd once been CEO, taking direction from engineers he'd previously managed. But he worked hard, kept his head down, followed instructions without complaint. After 6 months, he'd brought in 3 new clients. Small contracts, nothing major, but steady business. He'd learned to listen to the technical team instead of dismissing their concerns. Luis pulled me aside one afternoon. Boss, I have to admit, Frank's been helpful. He knows how to talk to executives, translates the technical stuff into business language they understand. Think he's learned his lesson? I think he's learned that being CEO doesn't make you smart, and being smart doesn't make you CEO. The real test came when Frank brought us a potential client who specifically requested Tyler Brooks to handle their project. Apparently, Tyler had reached out to them from California, claiming he could provide better service than his former company. Frank came to my office with the email. They want to know if we can match Tyler's technical credentials and experience. I read the message. Tyler was still claiming credit for the Meridian infrastructure, still pretending he understood network architecture. What do you want to do? Frank asked. Forwarded them the court documents from the Meridian bankruptcy case, the ones where expert witnesses testified that Tyler's modifications caused the system failure. Then send them our actual client references. Frank nodded. And Tyler? Tyler made his choice. He can live with the consequences. The client chose us. Tyler's consulting pitch died quietly, just like his previous ventures. A year later, I stood in the same lobby where I'd once carried a cardboard box full of personal items. But now there was a different display case by the elevators. Austin Business Journal, Technology Executive of the Year, Nathan Crawford, Chief Technology Officer, Apex Network Solutions. Below that, a smaller frame. Austin Tech Weekly, Comeback Story of the Decade, From Fired Engineer to Industry Leader. Frank walked by with a stack of client proposals. He paused at the display case. Congratulations, Nate. You earned this. We all earned it. Everyone who refused to give up when things looked impossible. He nodded and continued toward the elevator. No resentment, no bitterness. Just a man who'd learned the difference between authority and respect. That evening, I drove home to the same house I'd almost lost 3 years ago. Same neighborhood, same neighbors. But everything felt different now. My phone buzzed. Text from Sarah, now in her junior year at UT. Dad, saw the article about the company's IPO filing. Does this mean you're officially rich now? I typed back, rich enough. But more importantly, I'm proud of what we built. Proud enough to finally ask out that woman from your book club? Focus on your studies, kiddo. Dad, you're 49, not 90. Live a little. I smiled and put the phone away. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to focus on building something other than networks. But first, I had one more thing to finish. I opened my laptop and started typing. The Network Engineer's Revenge, a true story of corporate betrayal and professional redemption. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply telling the truth.